meet. So some of the victories that they achieved in hunting had to be transferred to others. It has to be told to others. So there was no real language evolved. So what they did was they did acting most of the time with sounds, not particularly any particular giving any meaning to any particular word or expression. So they started acting. It started with acting in the absence of language, and the gestures that they used stood for the language. And slowly, and very slowly, they developed their language. A particular voice expressed in a particular way meant something, and some other word pronounced differently meant something else, and always with the right expression. So slowly a language developed, and that was the next stage of civilization. And then slowly they found a script, how to write, and that was the greatest development until that time. And then slowly the language developed and they started writing. That was the first stage of civilization. Actually, and then came again ages later. And all through these ages, man used to dream of reproducing movement and reproducing sound. This they tried various things, that nothing worked, but then there were attempts all through. And finally one day they found the possibility of having moving images. So this became the age of the image. So this was actually the day man invented moving image and the sound synchronized with that. That marked the reinvention of humanity. Man reinvented himself because he could see people who are no more around, they are recorded, they are reproduced in sound and images. This was the greatest invention man has achieved. So, while talking about literature, you should know that human progress should be seen not in terms of Iron Age and those ages, but in terms of literacy, language, literature, and the way we became more and more civilized and modern. So, in the interest of brevity, I just wrote down. I was told that this session it has to be very short. Nobody should talk at length. So I wrote down what I had to say. As I mulled over the subject of this very special festival in Hyderabad, which is both a celebration of literature and cinema, I am prompted to become aware that I am into both as a professional filmmaker and as an occasional writer. My way down the lane has been from literature to cinema. It was rather more circumvent, from literature to theatre and thereon to cinema. The interrelation between film and literature is a much debated topic. Also, the literature part of the subject sanctifies its relevance in a literature festival. For that matter, any traditional, conventional academic debate. We all know good literature is in great demand everywhere, whereas in the case of cinema, it is different. With adjectives like excellent, intelligent, or artistic, it would per se scare away the audiences, at least in our country. All the same, those of us who are die-hard lovers of both good literature and good cinema carry on the discussion that helps understand the nuances of these two areas of human ingenuity and creativity. While literature has been in evolution for hundreds of years, cinema is just about a century old. Its long life and tradition has given literature an edge over the comparatively nascent art of cinema. Cinema is also greatly dependent on literature for its study and understanding. All the terms and tools of literature are used in evaluating or even dismissing a film. If the film is very beautifully shot, if the film is very beautifully shot, it would be described as poetic. Thus, literature is an unavoidable vehicle for other art forms to ride over. No wonder there is no debate or discussion without literature taking the maternal role. Literature is solely addressed to the literate, a reader who is awake, alert, critical, and attuned to the many hues and colors of the written word. Literature's appeal is to the cultivated individual who can take surprises and complexities and can savor idioms hitherto unfamiliar. Cinema, on the contrary, is essentially addressed to a mass of people, the audience that gets assembled inside a darkened hall to watch and share the thrills and excitements of an experience as a temporary community of dissimilar tastes and attitudes. Consequently, cinema is always engaged in an endeavor to please and placate an audience that even as being literate, think and behave like uninitiated as a mass. Here, one is addressing a group whose responses are guided and governed by the faculties of the lowest common denominator. While it is widely acknowledged that cinema, from its very inception, has been deeply influenced by literature, it is hardly recognized that cinema in turn has influenced literature to a great extent. It even gave rise to a genre of writing called the anti-novel. One of the prominent proponents of the anti-novel was the French author and filmmaker Alain Robbe-Grillet. His novels did not ever use any adjectives. He just described scenes graphically as if he were describing a film shot without ever using any of the traditional means of dramaturgy or involvement of the audience in the progression of the plot or the characters. Alain Robbe-Grillet's career as a creator of fiction was not restricted to the writing of novels. For him, creating fiction in the form of films was of equal importance. His film career began when Alain Resnais chose to collaborate with him on his 1961 film Last Year in Marienbad. In the credits, it was presented as a film equally co-authored by Alain Robbe-Grillet and Alain Resnais. His first independent film was L'Immortel, The Immortal. To pare it down to essentials, literature is written to be read, whereas cinema is created to be seen and heard by an audience. Literature lets and leads each individual reader to create his own image of objects, people, and nature. We call it word image. Cinema creates plastic images for the multitude of audiences. The images of cinema or its sounds do not change with the audience, whereas the experience of literature is something very subjective and unique to each reader. Tarkovsky, the great Soviet filmmaker, has said that every art form aspires to the state of literature. He has surmised that a filmmaker's mission should be to take cinema to the level of literature by investing it with the power to overcome its plasticity. Let us look at it this way. Literature leaves no residues. It takes the reader direct to the core of an experience, and having performed its role of holy function, it vanishes into thin air, leaving nothing behind. In cinema, the medium is composed of actors, visuals, sounds, colors, and compositions, and each of it has its own definite form, function, and a life beyond creating a composite fictional impact on the audience. The actor is a concrete reality, so are the visuals and sounds. The viewer here, wherever and whenever, irrespective of his or her class and consciousness, is interacting with a concrete objective medium without any change or variation. According to Tarkovsky, cinema should overcome this plasticity to make claims to the status of literature. Tarkovsky has achieved it in his works like Andrei Rublev and Stoker. not a minor achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adurji. This has really set the tone for the next 3 days.
Can we use this chair? Or
Indeed,
someone's coming?
each art form, the word, the image,
Yeah.
and experience do connect us, and that is